We arrived in New Caledonia in the morning after a stop in Japan, and the climate was warm. We had all our luggage, and we waited for a taxi, a van to drive us until the camping we had planned to stay in for a few days until our biologic clock adapt to the change of place on the planet. The plan was to hire a van to drive and in a place where we could look for a land to purchase and then to create our business, our ecotouristic business. But we went to the west coast and we had an experience, an horrible one, because the mosquitoes were so aggressive, so that we changed of side of the island of New Caledonia and went to the east coast, very famous for the Melanesian gardens. So we were looking for place nice to live, and we arrived in Poneriwen, quite north of the island, and there we stayed a night and looked for an opportunity to settle in another available place, and we entered in a tribe, and then we spoke with someone, a young guy, who offered us his land to stay there. It was the land of his grandparents, inhabited land, a former place where they were living in the mountains. And it was exactly what we were looking for. So that we moved there with our tents and materials. And the deal was that we would clean some space in the forest where we could see some fruit trees living in the wide area, just putting our small tents there and eating cocos and bananas and bathing in a small place of the creek and just enjoying life. And at that time it was also a kind of healing, because the climate there is very balanced. It's very peaceful, around 25 degrees all day long. So it's very peaceful to let the body appreciate this context, this environmental context. There's no phone, no social pressure, no pollution, no preoccupation, worries about the families or the administrations, etc. No taxes. So we were just cleaning the psychological and even the physical, because we were carrying, I can't remember, we were carrying this memory of the social, the cultural context, making a kind of pressure on us. And there we were just in connection with nature and no pressure happened. Until after 4 months, the owner, Leopold, the owner of the land, told us that in fact it was not his land. It was a common land belonging to his family, so he was not the owner. It was a tribe land, and the tribe was managed by the elders, and the elders were not, they disagree, we stayed there without paying anything. So they wanted some money to buy some tobacco and alcohol. But we didn't have that money because the house in France was not sold yet. And we were not ready also to give money for these people to do negative things for their own health. So that we had to move, and my wife was about to give birth, so we found another possibility, always in the east coast, but a little bit south. At the beginning, we were in Point Dimier, and we went south to Poneriwen. Sorry, I made a mistake. So Point Dimier and the valley behind. I don't remember the name. And then we went south. And there we were offered encampments of different wines. It was not belonging to the Kanak, who are the natives of Melanesian, the natives of the island, but it was belonging to the Caldoche, who are descendants of people sent in the Bagne in New Caledonia. They were European from their roots, and they offered us a place, totally different one. So, but in the Kanak area, we were living just like in paradise, with lots of fruit trees and wide forest and space covered with plants. We arrived in a desert, and there were a fence between the two. We arrived in a desert. The inhabitants were cows, because the Caldoche, they were putting cows there, and so that it was all desertified. So we arrived with some plants to put and grow bananas, small banana trees, and some other plants to have our food, to grow our own food. But it was all eaten by night by cows. So we were desperate, and we were obliged to buy junk food in some shops, in tinned food or deshydrated food like milk for the children. So it was horrible. Except that we had a small creek there to bath, so that was nice. And my wife gave birth to the seventh child there in the mountain. By our own, just like always. I will speak about that later. And so we stayed about a few months too. And the owner, there was an owner here. The owner was impressed because he arrived the day before the birth, and it was his birthday. So he was coming to have a feast with friends for his birthday in some part of his property, inland property. He was living in Numea, in the town, but he was working there, but he had his property where we stayed for a while. And so that he was impressed. We were enjoying a roof and some place to cook and some place to sleep for the children, and we had our tent and some toilets there, so rudimental things. He had a generator so that he could put electricity when he was coming there. So we stayed there for time. We enjoyed some very challenging climate with, I remember, twice 50 centimeters rain in a day. It was huge, huge, huge. 50 centimeters, half a meter of water in one day, and it happened twice. And after that, we were warned that a cyclone was coming, so we had to protect ourselves in some cabins, and we had to cross the river, and we did that with a cable and with the backpacks, and hang it at the cable, so we had to cross. It's a funny, crazy adventure. But ultimately, the hurricane change of direction, and instead of New Caledonia, he went to Cairns in Australia and devastated a lot there. So that we were lucky, and we said thank you to the universe for that. And so we kept enjoying our time there until we decided to move to go north of the island, because the plan was to find a solution to stay and establish in the island. So we went to Yengen, where there were a cultural center, met the director, and he offered us to go to his trip. So we went to Bakulna, but with our campment. So I installed all there, and I had to go back to France for a couple of weeks to sell the house because we found a buyer. I did that, but at that time, the family, when I was in France, had to be moved in emergency by the policeman because the family of the director in Bakuna was not agree of our presence, disagree our presence, so that when I came back from France, I found them in a camping in Yengen. There we stayed for a few weeks by the sea and thinking about our next step, because we realized that we didn't find the solution we wanted in New Caledonia. The house was sold in France, so we had money, and so we could open new possibilities. And once the passport of our new baby was made, we decided finally to go to Australia.